Welcome to the EntreEd Talk podcast. We are your hosts, Toy Hirschman and
Laura McCall.
Join us as we dive into incredible stories from inspiring entrepreneurs around the world.
Whether you are an educator looking for ideas to engage students, a new learner, or someone who wants to be inspired, our guest journeys and their ideas will give you resources to create value and take your own leap into entrepreneurship.
We are so looking forward to sharing our message with you.
And don't forget to like, rate, and subscribe to the EntreEd Talk podcast on whatever platform you listen.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the EntreEd Talk podcast. I am Toy, and I am here today with Dr. Ben Eng. We are so excited to have him today. Dr. Eng, Ben, is an associate professor of marketing and entrepreneurship at Marshall University's Lewis College of Business and Brad D. Smith School of Business. He is also the executive director and co-founder of the iCenter, which is the university's Center for Entrepreneurship and Business Innovation. Ben teaches marketing and entrepreneurship courses where his students learn by applying cutting-edge techniques on real businesses to solve real problems. In 2018, Ben won the Pickens Queen Teacher Award, which is Marshall University's highest teaching award for newer faculty members. And in 2019, he won the Robert P. Alexander Mentorship Award, which goes to the faculty member in the College of Business who demonstrates excellence in mentoring students. Wow, that's a lot. It's awesome. His research focuses on design thinking and celebrity branding, and oh boy, am I going to dive into that one. Ben's research papers have been accepted in the Journal of Product and Brand Management and Sage Research Methods. He has presented his research at conferences such as the Association for Consumer Research North American Conference and the Society for Advancement of Management International Business Conference. Before his career in academia, he worked in the entertainment industry as one of Hollywood's leading talent agencies, United Talent Agency. He received his Bachelor of Arts from James Madison University, his MBA from Marshall University, and his PhD in Business Administration from Southern Illinois University. A native of Huntington, West Virginia, Ben maintains strong ties to the local community. He learned the importance of business, marketing, and entrepreneurship from his parents who owned and operated a local Chinese restaurant named Ming's Restaurant for over 30 years. He serves on the board of directors at the Developmental Therapy Center and Goodwill of, I meant to ask you how to say this, but KYOWVA, and is an avid supporter of his high school alma mater, St. Joseph Central High School in downtown Huntington. Welcome, Ben. So happy to have you.
Pleasure to be here, Toy. And and that bio can be a tough read. I know there's a couple landmines in there. Yeah, that Goodwill thing stands for West Virginia, Kentucky, Ohio. So it's kind of like an acronym that kind of pulls it all together. So
I was going to ask you that before we started, but I was going to say it, Kiowa.
Yeah. Now that I'm hearing you go through that, I actually probably need to do design thinking on that and actually kind of make the bio a little bit more readable. So yeah, I'll actually go back after this and go through my bio, make it a little bit easier to get through without all the landmines and all the different names of all the conferences. It gets pretty thick in there. So yeah,
good,
that a little bit.
It's really good, and it shows just highlights just all of these accomplishments. Some of these conferences, the names, like even our organization, it's so long, you almost pass out saying the name of it.
Oh yeah. And same thing with a lot of whenever we do research and we write papers or present at conferences, the titles are so long. They're like, the title is like equally as long as the paper, it's like these huge things. And as obviously somebody going through the doctoral program yourself, I'm sure you see a lot of that yourself.
Yeah, I was just digging into some of it right before this recording. But So before we dive into all of this, because I'm so excited to talk to you today, so I wondered if you could share a little more about your background and your journey from where you started and where you are now, because I've heard some of it before, but it is really, really fascinating.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it reminds me of like Forrest Gump a little bit, how you kind of have all these different things that happen in your life and it kind of shapes you into who you are at the end of who you are today. So yeah, I grew up, I've lived in 3 time zones in the United States. The only one I haven't lived in is Mountain Time. So, but yeah, I've lived in Pac Time, Eastern Time, and Central. So just to kind of give you a broad overview of how many places I've kind of lived. But yeah, I was originally, it's funny because I kind of started where I ended, which is Huntington. So I was born and raised in Huntington, West Virginia. And of course now I work at Marshall University, which is in Huntington, West Virginia, but like a lot kind of happened in between. So I know we're probably going to dive into a little bit more. So I'll just kind of give you like a top level overview of it. But I was born and raised in Huntington, West Virginia, then went off to college at James Madison, as you mentioned in the bio, which is in Harrisonburg, Virginia. And I picked that because it was interesting. Like I loved Huntington and I loved Marshall, even as a high school student going into college. But at the same time, you're at that age, you're living with your parents, you're like, kind of want to get out of the house and explore and all that stuff. So, I picked a place that I tried to pick a city that was like Huntington, and that's Harrisonburg. It was a lot like Harrisonburg, Virginia is a lot like Huntington. And I tried to pick a school that was a lot like Marshall, like size wise and all that kind of stuff. And James Madison reminded me a lot like Marshall. So it was like kind of being able to like, be in Huntington and at Marshall, but in a different city at a different school. So like the similar characteristics, but not be under my mom and dad's roof, so I could get away with stuff. So I went to, born and raised in Huntington, went to James Madison. Then after that, I actually didn't major in business. I minored in it, just to kind of talk about how important it is to sort of, have a great plan B. I really thought I was going to be a lawyer for my whole life and, or my whole childhood. And so after James Madison, I majored in political science, and after James Madison, went to Penn State Law and did that for a year. And that's when I kind of realized, I don't know if I actually want to be a lawyer. So it took a leave of absence from Penn State and really kind of had like one of those like 22-year-old midlife crises. Like, now what am I going to do? Because don't know, like, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. Don't know what I want to do now. And my mom and dad were like really, really upset because they're like, wait a second, you have this great opportunity to be a lawyer at Penn State and, and all this stuff. And, it's like, now you're going to like do what? And I was like, didn't really have an answer for that. Like, I was like, yeah, I don't really know exactly what I want to do. Even though I have this like apparently great option that's ahead of me, or that I was in, like, or that I was giving up on. So like one of my friends from high school, his name is Jonathan Frederick. He really good high school buddy of mine. He wanted to be an actor. So he was going to LA anyways to be an actor in LA. He was like, moving there with or without me. And then he, was like, hey man, like rent's really expensive out there in LA. It'd be great to have a roommate, to help me defray rent. You're not doing anything. You're a, law school dropout. Why don't you come with me and, move in with me down there and, we can, try to tackle LA together. I was like, sure. Okay, let's do it. I was like, why not? I was like, why not? I remember saving up, got like a part-time job over the summer and saved up like $3,000, which I guess in my mind seemed like a lot of money, but like in LA, that's like not a lot of money when you consider like how expensive rent is out there. So anyways, I had $3,000, moved out there with my buddy Jonathan, and was quickly realized like $3,000 is going to go pretty quick out there with rent. And I was like, I wonder how long I'll be able to sustain myself out there. And I ended up taking a couple like part-time jobs. I worked at like Banana Republic doing retail. And I'm a big soccer guy, and I helped like manage like a soccer league on the weekends, like a kids soccer league, like, like coordinating the refs and coordinating the jerseys and the coaches and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of like scraped by, for a couple months. And again, I have a college degree at this point. Neither one of those jobs require a college degree. So, parents are getting increasingly mad, like they're like, you're not killing it in life right now. And that was definitely true, but at the same time I was finding my way. And eventually what ended up happening was, I was able to sustain myself out there for a couple of months, with these jobs. And they were jobs, they weren't careers, and I think that's when I started learning the difference between a job and a career. I was like, well, I've got jobs that are scraping my way through, but these aren't careers. And my friend who wanted to be an actor, he was like, yeah, like, it'd be great if, you worked at a talent agency or something, then, maybe you could help me get auditions in the future and all that kind of stuff. Right. And I was like, that's actually a pretty good idea. I don't know anything about the talent agency world. Like I love movies. I'm a big movie buff, and I'm a big, I used to be a big TV buff. I don't watch as much anymore because it's so addictive, but I'm still a huge movie buff. Anyways, so I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot, and just literally sent and I'm not joking when I say literally, I know people use that term like all the time, but like there's a book that had every single talent agency and every single management company in it. And I literally sent a resume to every single one. and only one company actually called me back, and it was a smaller agency called the House of Representatives. And they didn't necessarily like represent like huge stars or anything, but they represented a lot of working actors and character actors, a lot of great actors, but not necessarily like A-list celebrities. But it allowed me to sort of get my foot in the door and learn the business. And I was there for 3 years, and I loved learning about it. I worked really, really hard and learned so much about it. And then got an opportunity to work at another agency that is bigger, that does have A-list celebrities. That's United Talent Agency. People can Google that to see sort of what they're all about. And, they have a lot of the bigger names. And I did that for another 3 years and learned the business. And it was an amazing experience. And, and I started realizing, oh my gosh, that, even though I majored in political science, I minored in business. And now that minor in business was really like kicking in. I was like, oh, wow, I kind of like know what's going on a little bit here, And of course I had to do a lot of learning on my own too, because I didn't know a lot about show business per se. But, worked really hard, did that. And then eventually, and I'm sure we'll talk about this down the road, but decided to move back to Huntington and Marshall to get my MBA. And, people thought it was a little crazy at the time. They're like, well, now, like you are having this pretty cool career and, in LA working at talent agencies, representing actors, writers, directors, and all this kind of stuff. And, why would you move back to West Virginia to get your MBA? But I did, and we can talk about that a little bit down the road, but I did. And it was, after that, I decided, there was a professor here at Marshall that was like, oh yeah, you'd be a good professor. And I totally disagreed at the time. I was like, there's no way I would be a good professor at Marshall. I, didn't even like presenting, like in class, didn't like group projects, didn't like public speaking. Like, there's no way. And he's like, no, give it a shot. So I taught a class right after I graduated, after I got my MBA, I taught a principles of marketing class and an intro to marketing class. Loved it. Wasn't very good at it, but loved it. And I was like, well, how do I make more money doing this? And they're like, well, you got to get a doctorate. You got to get a PhD in marketing. I was like, where do I do that? And I like looked at all these different schools, and there was one in Illinois, and Southern Illinois University. And I never really knew anything about Southern Illinois or Carbondale or the Central Time, but they accepted me, and it looked like a pretty good school. I went down there, and for 4 years, I worked hard, wrote my dissertation, graduated with my PhD, and it so happened that Marshall, at the same time that I graduated PhD, had a job opening as a marketing professor at Marshall, and the stars aligned, and I got the job at Marshall to come back home. So, that's kind of a little bit more detail than I thought I was going to give, but like a high level overview of sort of how, the life journey. And I'm sure we'll dive a little bit more into it, but that's kind of like the Forrest Gump story there.
That's awesome. I think my parents, like yours, had this collective, like, I just slapped myself in the head, for those of you that can't see me. Because I did the same thing. I got my degree in engineering, and then I bartended.
That was a big part of actually coming back to Huntington and getting my MBA, because even though I was working in the show business, and like had a real career at that point, my mom and dad were always still kind of like, they're very education focused, and we're like, they would still be like, yeah, okay, that's great, but you never finished law school, you never got an advanced degree. So that was actually a big part of moving back home to get my MBA. There were some other reasons too, but that was definitely one of them. There was multiple reasons that it actually made sense, even though from the outside looking in, it didn't necessarily make sense. Yeah.
That's awesome. What a cool journey.
Yeah.
So I just have to know the answer to this question. So you wrote your dissertation, and you study celebrity brands and design thinking. Please talk about that, because two of those things don't seem to go together, but they do.
Yeah, and I guess it's strange because I haven't really actually figured out how to merge them together yet, and under one paper. But it's just sort of like, kind of like research interests that I have, and I'm sure at some point they will sort of like all come together. Like I'll figure out how to put them together. But yeah, like the celebrity branding stuff came from my background in working in show business and working in talent agencies. So, when you're in, just to kind of like briefly kind of high level overview of like what a talent agent does or talent agency does is, like if you're watching a movie and there's an actor in there, it can be the star, it can be an extra, it can be anybody, it can just be like, anybody in the movie. You're, somebody, that's a job, right? Like it's a job for that actor to be on that movie. and somebody had to like get them that job. So that's actually what the agent does, is they help actors get jobs on movies. So, and that's actually how people end up becoming stars, is, you have somebody who is an actor who nobody knows, and then they get this big role in the Avengers or whatever movie it's going to be. And then suddenly, like, now they're on the cover of People, and they're TMZ fodder, like the latest baby bump, what's going on with their lives, who are they dating? And then boom, the next thing you know, they're stars. So it's kind of like that's like the trigger that actually creates celebrities. So, and then, so what I started realizing it, like, the work that I was doing at the talent agency was like very much like it's marketing. But you're marketing people instead of products, right? You're marketing these people so that way they can become stars, and that's what you're sort of doing. So when I fast forward a couple of years, now I'm getting my PhD at Southern Illinois. We have to write this dissertation, which is essentially like an opus on some area that you're interested in. I was getting a PhD in marketing. So branding is something I've always been interested in. And obviously with my show business background, I was like, like these celebrities are brands, these celebrities are brands. And at the talent agency, what we did was we marketed these people as brands. So I looked it up, and there was only like 1 or 2 papers written about celebrity branding. And, an example of a celebrity brand would be like Jordan, Michael Jordan's brand, or J-Lo or Kim Kardashian. These are all people, but they're also like brands, that people consume. So what I really wanted to study was, was really interested in was how do people come to care about celebrity brands? Like, why do people care so much about them? So, if you think about it, like Kobe Bryant, he passed away tragically a couple months ago, and like the nation is in mourning, like people are bawling. And I remember, I'm old enough to remember when Michael Jackson died. And I remember like people were on suicide watch because it was just such a traumatic moment when like somebody like that passes away. And it kind of, the Kobe Bryant thing reminded me of that. And I was like, trying to think, was like, kind of, if you really take a step back and you think about it, you're like, well, that's kind of weird, because like usually when you build a relationship and build attachments with people, it's usually because it's a two-way street. Like they care about you, you care about them, and like there's that interaction where you really know them and all that kind of stuff, and that's what creates like relationships and attachments and caring. But like with the celebrities, you don't actually know them. It's a one-way street. They're talking to you, but you never talk to them. So it's kind of an interesting process. It's a different process for sure, where, if you died, would they be in mourning? But when they die, you're in mourning. So I was really curious about how that happens. Like, what's the process in which that happens? So that's sort of what the dissertation was about. And just to kind of give you a high level overview of how it happens is so, and this is why I phrase the term celebrity brand rather than just celebrity, because ultimately you don't really know them as people. Them based on what the story is told about them. So like when we read a tweet from Kobe Bryant, or we read a news article from Kobe Bryant, or we watch him on the court, or watched him on the court, or any of these celebrities, or watch celebrities in a movie, that's how read news articles about TMZ. That's how we get to know these celebrities. Like we're getting to know them through the narratives that are created about them, that they create about themselves. And that's actually what creates their brand. And because again, they might be totally different than those narratives. They might be totally different than their brand. So there's like a public persona that is out there, which is their brand. And then there's who they really are, right? So we know their public persona as built by their narratives. And that's ultimately what we get attached to, and it might closely represent who they really are, but we don't know. So it's basically a whole paper on that concept. Yeah.
So fascinating. I read through it. I didn't get to the end yet. I'm excited.
It's a long read. There's a shorter one that just got published. That's, the dissertation's 200 and some pages, but I condensed it when it was published, and it was just published last month, refined it down to like 20 pages. It's still a hard read because it's an academic paper, but it's interesting. Yeah.
It's fast. It truly is fascinating. Anybody that likes to read, you got to go find this. If anybody wants to know, I can put the link in the show notes. But it's really good. It bummed me out though, because I think it hit me that Kim Kardashian doesn't care about me.
Sorry to break it to you, right? Now, I mean, I guess like, you have opportunities to meet them sometimes, but in generalities, it's really just
Right.
Generally speaking, you never meet the celebrities that that you adore or whatever. But yeah, I mean, like occasionally I'm sure you'll meet them and maybe you get a chance to know them. And, like I've had a chance to meet a lot of these celebrities now through work, but at the same time, for the general public, it's rare when you meet the celebrity that you end up being attached to. So, but yeah, it's kind of an odd process when you start thinking about it and you're like, huh, that is kind of strange. Why do I actually care so much? But we do.
It's really cool. And the idea about almost like, we talk with entrepreneurship, we talk about products and services and social entrepreneurship, all these different things, but you don't really think about people, a celebrity, a person that's a product, really.
Yeah.
And that's just the same as you brand Coca-Cola, you're branding. No, I'm stuck on Kim Kardashian now. Hey, Kim, call me.
Let's tag her in this podcast. See if she gets on the radar.
I wouldn't mind tapping into that.
Yeah. It's a good network to be a part of. I mean, but yeah, I think like, so really, I started off like my PhD is actually in marketing. It wasn't in entrepreneurship, and so I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and a large part of like, if you look at like entrepreneurship, like the beginning parts of it, especially when you're looking at like product market fit and established, it's really like customer focused first, right? Before you have a product and a customer, you really don't have to worry about any of the other stuff in business. Like the first step of entrepreneurship is basically marketing, right? It's like you're trying to figure out how to craft a solution for a particular market that you want to solve a problem for. So there's definitely some natural links between the two. But at the time when I wrote the dissertation, I was really just 100% like a marketing researcher in terms of the research I was doing. It was all about marketing. And then as I started teaching and started getting more involved with entrepreneurship and started really kind of diving into that world, that's when kind of design thinking kind of came across. And when I started learning more about design thinking, it's like, oh, it'd be cool to do some research on design thinking. So it was, that's become like a second interest that I've had, and that's why I end up studying and doing research on both of them. But really, yeah, I haven't really thought about ways to connect them yet. But I do think it's probably on the horizon at some point. My crazy brain's going to start connecting dots, and I'm like, oh yeah, this will be a cool project to work on.
Here at EntreEd, we are continually searching for new ways to support you and your entrepreneurial programming, initiatives, and innovations by offering a rich array of professional development options, resources, events, and networking opportunities. EntreEd is excited to now offer all of those fundamentals in one place, introducing our new membership portal to help launch your career. There are both individual and school memberships available. Your students will thank you. Join the community today at entreed.org/membership.
Speaking of that, of design thinking and entrepreneurship, can you tell us a little bit about, you founded the iCenter, or co-founded the iCenter. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is and how might somebody get involved with that and how that works with your students and Marshall, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so the story behind the iCenter is there was a student of mine named Izzy Rogner, and she was, I think it was the first year I taught. She was a sophomore in my intro to marketing class or something. It was pretty early in my career. It was definitely very early in my career, and I'm pretty sure she was a sophomore at the time. She was one of those like students that you just like, is destined for greatness. If she doesn't end up like ruling the world, I'll actually be kind of surprised. I'm like, huh, that's weird. I thought she would rule the world. And she just, had all the characteristics of somebody that was just gonna, change the world. And she ends up getting a job at Intuit and working a lot with Brad Smith. I remember the one piece of advice I gave her before she left was, whatever you do, because I know how she is. It's like, don't worry about us at Marshall for right now. Just do your thing. Put yourself in a position so 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, you can come back and do some cool things with us at Marshall. But right now, you focus on just being the best you can be and building your career. She's like, cool, I got it. So she leaves, and then literally 2 months into her career, it was around Christmas time, she calls me and she's like, hey, I want to do something for Marshall. I want to help you guys out. And I was like, really? Cool. What is it? She was like, well, one of the really neat things that we do a lot down here at Intuit, and a lot of the great companies here in Silicon Valley are doing, is this thing called design thinking. And it's a really cool tool for innovation and coming up with these great ideas, like Uber created, this amazing idea of how to disrupt, transportation in the taxi world. So she's like, it's the system of how they did all that, like how these people come up with great ideas here. I was like, well, that's pretty cool. And it's like, that sounds like, something that we probably could use at Marshall and West Virginia and all that kind of stuff. I never heard of it at the time, so, and so she's like, yeah, so let's try to come up with something. And I was thinking like, yeah, let's maybe do a competition. And she's like, that's a good idea. And I was like, of course, like with my celebrity background, I was like, it'd be cool to like be able to get celebrities and we can get like a lot of attention on it. And it'll be like this big deal. She's like, oh, let me see if Brad can like, work some magic and, talk to a few of his friends. So Brad lines up himself, first of all, and then, which is great. I mean, like that starts, that's already amazing. And then brings in on top of him, Chad Pennington. And then on top of him brings in Jennifer Gardner. So like, these are like the judges of this competition. I'm like, wow, these students are going to like really freak out. It's like, wow, I would have been like terrified if I was a student and had to present in front of them. So a bunch of Intuit people came and they taught design thinking, including Izzy, came and taught design thinking to a group of students. And it wasn't just a college business thing. It was we taught students from across the entire campus design thinking, and then they competed. They came up with ideas and they competed against each other. And presented it to the three of them, Jennifer Gardner, Chad Pennington, and Brad. And it was really cool. They, the winners got to go to Intuit and visit Intuit and Apple and Facebook, and it was a really neat experience. And then after that, it was like over, and it's like, okay, well, what do we do next, right? And it's like, the idea wasn't necessarily like, well, let's keep creating the same competition over and over and over again. The idea was like, well, it's a seed that we got to grow. So what can we do more now to get more people exposed to design thinking and entrepreneurship and innovation? So that's actually what the center was. It's like, okay, well, let's create a center now that takes that seed of that competition and really just blasts innovation, design thinking, and entrepreneurship knowledge out to all of West Virginia. So that was really the goal. We talk about the 3 C's a lot: the college, the campus, and the community. So those are the 3 areas that we want to blast design thinking and entrepreneurship education to all those groups. So like everybody in the college of business, everybody throughout the campus of Marshall, and then everybody in the community. And that could be Huntington, the tri-state, Southern West Virginia, and all of West Virginia, or perhaps even Appalachia. So, community is kind of like broadly defined or narrowly defined. So yeah.
That KYOWVA.
Yes. Yeah. Because we actually end up doing a lot of stuff, because we're right on the border. Like in Huntington, we're right on the border of Kentucky and Ohio. So that's why like you see this this tri-state thing, and do a lot of stuff with like some of the closer by schools in Ohio as well, because they're like 15 minutes away. So we end up like at the iCenter, we've done a lot of workshops. We do something, there's a STEM school over in South Point, Ohio, which is a really cool school. And we do a lot of design, we do some design thinking workshops and entrepreneurship workshops with them as well. And of course the schools in West Virginia. Yeah.
Awesome. That's amazing. Oh man, I would have been terrified too.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, it's like I said before, I was like a student who was already scared of like presenting, just like in a classroom with my friends and a teacher, like, and then this thing was like, it was like held in our playhouse, and Intuit came in and really, really like transformed the place. It looked like the Oscars. The place looked like it was like the Oscars, and like it had all the lights and the production and big, and all this stuff. And then you got literal stars in front of you. You got Brad and Jennifer Gardner and Chad Pennington. It's like, to this day, I'm like really, really proud of the students and the way they delivered, and were just how hard they worked to be perfect that day. And they did an amazing job and represented Marshall in a staggeringly awesome way.
Oh my gosh, that is so cool. That's so cool. So I wanted to kind of touch more on the design-based thinking. I think this is where this might go. I think you, in your bio, you said talked about how your strength when you're teaching is you help these students solve real actual problems for real actual businesses. Can you talk a little bit about how that works, how that looks like in your class and in the 3 C's, in the community, in the campus, in the college?
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess I'll start with like class first, because that's like maybe the most relevant one is like, I think about like, what is a job, right? Like what are we trying to accomplish and what's the overall impact? And what I was thinking and this is sort of something that evolved in my mind as I've become a teacher, is like, what is the goal of what we're trying to accomplish? And I more and more I think that the goal of what business education is it's like, okay, so we have like theories of business, of how things could work or whatever. And this is where we spend a lot of time with research and stuff that's in the textbooks and all that. You have all this knowledge. And then you've got like the real business world, which, is like moving at light speed. So, a lot of times there's sort of like a disconnect between like the speed of business education versus the speed of business in reality. And I really think our job as like business educators is to bridge those two worlds together and connect them in a way where the speeds are more similar, and like they students learn how to take those concepts and theories and move them into reality. And I think but in doing that, we prepare our students for the business world, because ultimately that's the thing that matters, is like, can our students do it in real life, and so that application part of it is like really, really critical. And it really kind of involves two things. Like the first thing is making sure that that what we teach is as real as possible, and they feel like it's real. Like I'm always talking about like the best way to learn things. So like you can learn Spanish in Spanish class, or you could like go to Spain. And I would imagine going to Spain to learn Spanish is like a far better way to learn it, because you are immersed in it and you need it. You have to apply it, and it's sort of the same way with like a hammer. So you could take a multiple choice test on a hammer, and you can learn the definition of a hammer, or you could go like build something with the hammer, right? And I would imagine that building something with the hammer is far more useful. So I think like really, really got to focus in on, creating an environment that does that of immersion, right? Like it's about immersion. And like, just like being in Spain, like I always tell my students, we always want to be in Spain, like when we're any concept that we're doing, we need to apply it right away so we can be there and immersed in business. So I want to create as many environments like that as possible. And then the second thing that needs to happen in addition to creating that immersive environment is me as a professor, as an educator, is like, I always got to be, again, the speeds are so different between the business academia versus the business world, that like I always got to make sure that I'm up to speed. And I think that what we really have to do in education is make sure that we don't consider ourselves just like the theory people or the business education people, but we're constantly connected and tapped into the business world. So this is why, going back to EntreEd, I'm constantly learning as much as I humanly can about what they're doing in Silicon Valley, because the business world moves at light speed. The Silicon Valley business world moves at like infinite light speed. Like they are so quick to everything, and they're built to be quick, by the way. It's not by luck, it's a design. So anyways, I want to learn that, because if I can learn that, then I can create the real environment that is needed in order to immerse them. So it's really important that I think business educators are constantly working with the best and the fastest in business, the most agile in business, so that way we can make sure that we create that bridge for students and from the business education world to the business reality world. Yeah. So in terms of design thinking, sorry to connect the dots to design thinking. Design thinking is a great tool to do that, because the first step of design thinking is deep customer empathy. So you can't just read about a customer or believe or just assume a customer thinks a certain way or does a certain thing. Like you've actually got to literally go out and go interact with the customer to get real feedback. And the testing part of design thinking and the empathy part of design thinking is just an automatic process that immerses them into real life problems of real customers. So it's a perfect vehicle for the mentality that I think that business educators should have.
I love that. It's so true how important experiential education is, and how unfortunately our country is not as connected to that as we should be. I love that you're doing that with your students. I always say you can't learn how to swim in the library. So
One of the funny secrets about me, I can't swim, so I can't swim anywhere. I need water wings. I'm like a 43-year-old that needs water wings.
How do you grow up in a place with so much water and rivers and not swim?
Just don't go in the deep end. This is like how I do it. When I go to the ocean, I just kind of go to the part where there's like a wave that hits me, which is pretty cool, but don't want to go any out further than that. And then same thing with pools and lakes. Just kind of stay close to the shore.
Stay on the side with your delicious tropical drink and your It's funny. That's funny because my husband doesn't swim, and we live very similar. He grew up here in rural Maryland, and it was like how we have in every direction we have a river, a lake, a something, and he just never did. And I was a competitive swimmer, so to me, you have to. It's like walking. Like you learn to walk, and then you learn to swim, and not necessarily in that order.
Well, I swim around you then, because you could save my life if I drown. So like as long as I know there's a lifeguard there, a professional that can help me, then I'd probably give it a shot.
I was one of those once upon a time, but I tried to teach my son in the pool like how you do the hold and carry, and I almost drowned. It wasn't as easy as I remember it being.
Well, it's kind of funny with like design thinking and like, it's got this whole growth mindset thing, there's never, it sort of starts infiltrating like everything you do. So even like now as I'm thinking about, like I didn't really learn how to swim very well. Maybe I should learn it because, if one person can do it, another person can do it. So maybe I should go try to learn how to swim. So I don't know. Maybe we'll see. Maybe I'll give it another shot.
Next time I come down your way, I'll meet you at the Marshall swimming pool and we'll
have some lessons.
I'll bring some water wings.
I'll need them.
It'll be fantastic.
Yeah. Not to linger too much on this, but like I know that so just funny quick story. So like I did have swimming classes when I was a little kid, and like they had like different like levels of like how depending on how good you are. And you start out at the guppy division. I remember guppy was like you have water wings, you're just trying to learn how to swim, and then ultimately you get up to like shark. But like I never got out of the guppy division. I was like the oldest kid in the guppy division, just like stuck in there and never got into the shark division. And I was like, I was like, all right. So maybe one of these days you can show me how to get out of the guppy career.
It was my goal when my kids were born. Like you have to learn how to swim. And but if I wasn't so an advocate of it, they might not know because my husband wouldn't teach them. And but they can swim now, so we're good. So this is so much fun. So tell us about what is your favorite thing about what you're doing with your work or with your philanthropy, whatever it is, like one of your favorite things now, because I'm sure you have a ton.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a naturally I like a lot of things. Like I'm a pretty curious guy. Like I just I'm interested in a lot of things, and but really I guess when it comes to like education and teaching and what I do in that particular world, I guess this applies to everything now I'm thinking about it is I'm a really big fan of like the future, like I'm a big proponent of the future. And like there's like a really good quote. I think it was the Duke basketball coach that said this, and he's like, what was great, what might be great, but it will only be great if you focus on what's now. And it reminded me of like a quote that my mom would always say, which is like, you can invest less now, or you can pay more later. You can invest less now, or you can pay more later. And both those quotes are kind of like alluding at the same thing, which is that if you really, really prepare and invest now, and you're really, really just like do your best to do things now and think about and build, then the future will be better than the past. And it's like I don't even know, like it's such an ingrained thing in the way that my parents kind of like taught me. And I just like it is such a part of who I am, of this. The future will be better than the past. The future will be better than the past. But we gotta like work to that now. We gotta do this now. The great thing about almost everything that I do now, it's regardless if it's coaching soccer or if it's the philanthropy work or it's teaching business, is that I get to work in the future. Like you and I get to work in the future, and every educator out here gets to work in the future. And how that's really, really cool, you know. And I actually was listening to a talk on YouTube from Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, and he was saying how, you know, because there's in technology, we get to work in the future. I tell all my employees we get to work in the future. And I was like, no, you don't. Educators get to work in the future.
Yeah, right.
You know, like, it's true they do to a certain extent, but like, you know, they get to work in the future in terms of like in terms of technology in the next, you know, 5-10 years. You know, we're working in the future of the next, you know, generation, you know, of like 10-20 years. And I think that's really inspiring to me, to be able to have that kind of impact, to be able to change the future in that way. You know, like Jeff Bezos is creating the next technology, but we're creating the next Jeff Bezos.
Right.
And I think that's, you know, a different kind of thing. And, you know, like, so you know, I always look at my job, you know, as like, you know, one being the bridge between, you know, theory and reality, but then also like, you know, also can we create, you know, Brad Smith, of course, is an alum of Marshall, and, you know, we've had a lot of great alums at Marshall, but what about the next group of, can we create the next Brad Smith, you know, and can we create 10 of them, you know, and who is it going to be? I mean, is it going to be like my student Izzy that I talked about? You know, that's what the future potential is. And, you know, but in order to reach that future potential, we have to focus on what's now, and we really have to start preparing and investing now so the future can be better than the past. So that's really my favorite thing about work, is that, like, you know, it's about making a difference in people's lives, so that way we can better people's lives and humanity and the future of humanity. So, you know, really, really great. Ended up with a great job. You know, it took me a while to get here. Lots of ups and downs and lots of different trials and errors to get here. But I always try to tell my students that, like, a lot of times, you know, it's like the best way is like the multiple choice, you know, like you got a multiple choice test. Process of elimination is like a very effective way of like getting to the right answer. And of course, design thinking is a very similar kind of concept as well. But that's sort of like the way that my life happened, was like I had to figure out that law school wasn't for me, and then other careers weren't for me until I figured out what was. So, but yeah, once I got the mindset of like, yeah, we can change the future and really impact the future of humanity in ways that like no one else can, I really knew that education was like a very, very important thing. Yeah.
That's awesome. What a great quote. I love that so much. And it's especially appropriate during a pandemic, like, because we're all everyone's like, oh, I just wanted to go back to normal. Well, it's not. Like, yeah,
I mean, some things will go back to normal, and some things won't change. Well, some things will change, you know. And I think it's, you know, I want to preserve the things that you really love and that aren't going to change. And then you make a list of the things that are going to change, and you're like, okay, well, you know, just kind of be realistic about it, and it's like, okay, there's some things that will change, there's things that won't change. What are the things that will change, and what do we do about this? So yeah, it's adaptation is a really important part, you know, of future. Of all the mindsets that you know future business leaders will need, adaptability, agility, you know, probably two huge one. Another one is probably focus, I would say, because, you know, like there's so many things. It's so easy to be distracted now, and you know, like you have, you know, great, like YouTube has like that thing where it's like it serves you up another video right afterwards, and it's always something you want to watch. So, you know, there's all these things that are built to distract us, and so focus is really an important thing as well. So I think, you know, it's a great point about like things that are changing, but, you know, just got to make sure that we always stay current with everything and get students prepared for whatever that world's going to be.
Yeah, that's so hard too. You know, what educators have to do, because we're not able to stand up and be the, you know, the giver of knowledge to kids anymore. It's their knowledge is in their pocket. The information is there, but we have to figure out how to, like with design-based thinking and with the experiential things that you're doing, you're giving them not only the education and the content, but you're giving them those experiences that promote the adaptability, the agility, those mindsets, the growth mindset, all of those things that really just, that's what they need, because who knows?
Yeah,
what it's going to look like. We're going to be 3D printing our food probably in very short amount of time.
I can't wait for that, by the way. I'm going to be
I know, me
chicken
too.
nuggets and pizza rolls. I'm like so ready for that world. But yeah, no, I think you're 100% right. I think the content is less important than how you apply the content. Like the content is on our phone. You can Google everything, and it's not about memorization anymore. It's about applying this information, this content, this knowledge in unique situations. So and that's hard. That's not as easy as it sounds. It's like you have this idea of any business concept, and it's like it can be something that you totally understand, but then and you can point it at, you can pick it out of a multiple choice test, but the minute that you drop it into a real situation that's like a messy situation, which all life is all messy. So you drop it into this really unique situation, and everything about it changes now. And the perfect example I remember is I remember teaching students about supply chain and making sure that you have a great relationship with your suppliers, because let's say you own a pizza joint and your supplier doesn't give you your dough. Well, your pizza joint is out now, right? You're you can't make pizzas. So you really have to make sure you have this very great relationship with your supplier, with all your suppliers. And I remember teaching this to my students, this is so important, guys. This is so important. See what it says on the PowerPoint slides? And they're like, yeah, whatever, And then we got to the application part where they actually have to apply. And I remember there was a group, once we got to the experiential part of it all, where now they're in Spain, now they're immersing. There was a company that was trying to build bracelets, and they had worked out with this group to build the charms. And then we were 3 days away from our big career day, or the big, not pitch contest, but we had a trade show where they got to sell the items, and their supplier completely bailed on them, didn't make the charms. And their product went up in smoke, or at least they thought it was at the time. And I remember they're like, oh my gosh, what do we do? What do we do? And that was such a more real way of learning supplier relationships than those PowerPoint slides, is because they actually, it actually happened where the relationship was not strong enough, and the supplier completely just was like, yeah, whatever, you guys don't matter or whatever. And what ended up happening was they found a supplier of these charms in the middle of a really, I can't remember what city it was, but it was in the middle of nowhere kind of. And I remember driving them to this place, and we thought we were lost. And this guy completely stopped everything he was doing to build these charms for the bracelet for the students. Oh. And I was like, guys, that's where relationships are built on. Supplier and partner relationships are built on is, don't forget what this guy just did for you. So being in Spain, right? They went to Spain, they will never forget the importance of supplier and partnership relationships are, because they had that whole experience. Whereas I'm sure they instantly forgot the PowerPoint slides. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's so true. My biggest supply chain fail right now is that I can't get my salad at McDonald's because they don't have they had to cut back. It's really upsetting to me. Oh, well, so the last thing we'll talk about is, I could talk to you all day, and I'm totally going to have you back because you were so delightful.
Anytime, I'll talk forever also.
If you want to honor me with that. So what currently are you working on, and what's on the horizon for Dr.
Yeah. I work on a lot. I'm a pretty busy guy. But if you want to change the world, you gotta do. It's a kind of take a shotgun approach to it, and I try to do a lot of things. And so I don't know. I could talk about a bunch of different things. I'll start with the things I'm maybe doing at the college and then work my way out. So within the College of Business, one thing that I'm doing is helping redesign the business school curriculum. And of course, you guys can probably imagine what I would like that curriculum to look like, and it should definitely be very experiential learning based, so they can apply concepts in really unique, complex situations. So be very based a lot on going to Spain. So that should be fun. I'm working through that right now. I just started that process, so that's probably a month or so into that. We're also in the throes of I help produce TEDx talks at Marshall. So we have We have TEDx Marshall U, and we'll be producing that. It's the 50th anniversary of Marshall's plane crash, so it's a really, so our theme this year is Rising. So be working on that and lining up speakers, and hopefully we can push some really great ideas out to the Marshall community based on TEDx Marshall U. So that'll be, I think it's going to be late April, early May is when that'll happen. So we're prepping up for that. As you probably know, we're doing a lot with the Department of Education to help infuse, a lot of, not just like actually entrepreneurship, but like working with Department of Ed to like incorporate a lot of all of our faculty here at Marshall, like the accounting faculty, the finance faculty, the management faculty, to enhance like their business curriculum and to help kind of level the field on that one with what we're doing in colleges, so we can build a better pipeline there. We have Governor's School, West Virginia Governor's School this summer, so we'll be prepping up and starting that whole thing, which will be really, really fun. 3-week, which is a 3-week academy for entrepreneurship, where students will literally learn from beginning how to start an idea and create a great idea like the next Uber, and then how to create it into reality. The iCenter, we just do a ton of like workshops and have a bunch of like one-off events. So I think in a couple of weeks, we're doing a thing for the Girl Scouts to help them get their innovation and entrepreneurship badges. We did that last year. It was actually our favorite event that we did. It's such a fun time. They come up with some amazing ideas. So we'll be doing that actually in a couple of weeks. We have 2 collegiate innovation and entrepreneurship competitions that we're planning for, one in the fall, one in the spring. So we're gearing that. Of course, they'll all be virtual. There's another big project that I'm working on, which is helping faculty and staff at Marshall learn how to do design thinking. So that way they can solve problem, because it's like a little town, Marshall's the campus is like a little town. And because of that, you have all sorts of different departments doing different things, and they can all use design thinking so they can innovate solutions to the problems they have. And so I'm starting a thing called Green Engine, which will teach all of these different departments design thinking. And in doing so, they'll not only innovate solutions to their own problems, it will make the university more agile in general. And you always hear like how universities are kind of slow a little bit, and academia is a little slow. So this will actually increase the agility of universities if we can have all these different departments using design thinking so they can adapt quickly. So it's interesting. Like so that's probably some of what I'm doing, but a lot. Yeah, it's a good time. They're all very high impact and all very important.
That's so many things, but that is super incredible.
Yeah, teaching classes, researching papers, writing research papers as well. Yeah.
Why not?
My actual real job, I have to do that as well too. So yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is wonderful. Well, I just have so enjoyed this conversation, Ben, and I really appreciate you being here. We usually try to keep it at like a drive time, but we went over a little bit today. It's totally
you can edit it. Feel free to edit me out. Just make sure it's a good edit.
Anything out, except
make me sound smart.
Except I think some of my boys are screaming in the backyard, and I hope that the viewers can hear them right now.
I couldn't hear it.
They're having a blast, but they are literally running by my window screaming. Oh, well, thank you so much. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to the next conversation.
Yes, thank you for having me.